As a Ram fan, what would make you happy at number 36? This is RamView.
It's hot out there. Let's blow them off the line of scrimmage. Hold on,
Live from the Ram Cave, I'm Joe Tarosian, and this is RamView, the April 17th, 2023 edition, brought to you by Kistler Law Firm. Injured in an auto accident? Need help? Got questions? Call Kistler Law at 661-206-6990. Kistler Law at 661-206-6990. And check out KistlerLawFirm.com. That's one word. KistlerLawFirm.com, and you can also reach out to them there as well. Kistler Law, they've been fighting for you since '92, and by Temple City Auto Repair. You got some auto issues, get yourself some John and Henry at TempleCityAutoRepair.com. Sorry for that mad dash. You didn't know I had that kind of a twitch, did you? But I had some noise-making stuff over here that I wanted to get out of the way, and I thought do it during the promo. So we are here. We're a little bit earlier. Usually I like to go on about 5 o'clock on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, but we're here at 3:40. I got stuff going on, a lot of stuff tonight. Kings hockey, basketball, Mets and Dodgers, and I got good seats. So I'm pretty happy right now, and someone has clicked on, so I'm even happier that you're live with me. So cool. Let's get right to it. When you think about the Rams drafting at 36, what would make you unhappy and what would make you happy, right? And I was thinking about that. And what would make you unhappy with what the Rams did with the 36th overall pick? I'd be really unhappy if the Rams drafted a guard. Now, if they want to draft a guard late or outside of the top 100, okay, Logan Bruss territory. I'm good with that. And Andrew, David Edwards territory. Okay, I'm good with that. If they drafted a safety at 36, which I've seen far too many mock drafts show the Rams taking a safety, and it just bugs me when I see it. And it's not a deep safety class. And right now, the Rams invested in 2 safeties last year who did get playing time. They've got Jordan Fuller coming back. They can draft a safety, but draft it where you usually draft a safety, 5th round or beyond, right? And for depth, I have no problem with that, but not at 36. I would be really disappointed if the Rams drafted an off-ball linebacker at 36, which I've seen some mock drafts do. And it's like, are you looking at things? Are you following the trend of things? I haven't seen this on explicit Ram podcasts, so good credit to our community out there. But in other communities, I just think they go through these mock draft simulators, take the best player available, get the good grade, and then pat themselves on the back. But I don't want to see the Rams take an off-ball linebacker at 36, 5 through 7. Yeah, that's where I want my off-ball linebacker. Drafting a wide receiver, that gets really tricky, right? I think there's a lot of talent always at wide receiver, but I think you could find that later. If the Rams drafted a wide receiver at 77 or further back, okay. If they traded back and picked up an extra pick in the first 100 and took a receiver, okay. The part that scares me, and I haven't checked to see if he returns kicks, is watching the Rams have worked out Clayton Tune. They've interviewed his number 1 receiver, Tank Dell. And when you watch their highlights, you can see why people would be kind of enamored with Tank Dell out of Houston. But I don't want the Rams drafting a receiver at 36. And I don't want the Rams drafting a running back. Now, Bijan Robinson, it's not happening. If Bijan Robinson was at 36, yeah, I think you'd have to find a way to draft Bijan Robinson at number 36. He's not going to be there. Originally, when the draft season began, the Texas running back was actually outside of the first round, but as more teams have done their work, as you know, everything stock goes up, stock goes down. You know, a team that's complete, a team that's competing for a title and needs a luxury piece, Bijan Robinson is that piece. Philly he's that piece. If KC had a shot at him, if Cincy had a shot at him, Joe who? Mixon? What? Who's Joe Mixon, right? I got Bijan Robinson. I could see teams making those kind of moves. Of course, the Bills could really use a frontline running back. But I don't see teams that are in rebuilds, casual rebuilds, retools, remodels, or whatever you want to label the Rams situation as drafting a running back at 36, and Bijan's not going to be there at 36. What would make me happy? What would make you happy as a Rams fan when you think about what they might do at 36? We talked about what we don't want them to do, or what I don't want them to do. What would make me unhappy? What would make me happy? Well, depending on what they're really trying to chase down in this draft, I think you could move back a few spots and still get a good edge rusher, right? So I'd be happy if the Rams traded back and acquired more picks. They got 3 picks in the top 100. I did a couple of mock draft scenarios where you move back and you pick up a third rounder, a four. So you have 4 picks in the first 100 and 6 picks in the first 150. When you're drafting a player inside the top 100, you're drafting for a starter. When you're drafting between 101 and 150, you're drafting for a rotational player who can contribute. And anything you get beyond that in that draft in the later rounds is all gravy, right? That's why a Nick Scott was gravy, when the Rams have hit on some, Skoranek is gravy. And think about that. Ben Skoranek, 7th round, is still in a Ram uniform, and Jacob Harris, who was drafted ahead of him, is not. So he was gravy, right? Jacob Harris was a missed draft pick. So I'd love to see the Rams trade back. I wouldn't be upset to see the Rams trade back. Do I see them trading up? I think they got to fill out this roster. 45, 46 live bodies on this roster. They got to fill out this roster because they don't have players to play during the preseason, and we know they don't play starters. So I would move back and grab as many draft picks as I could. And I think in the 2 mocks that I did, we'll set aside the Davis Mills deal, because I know people haven't really commented on my Davis Mills choice. But each time I moved back, I was able to get the Rams 6 picks in the top 150 and 15 picks overall. So moving back would be cool. And each time I moved back, I was able to draft a linebacker who's been on the radar, or an edge player on the radar. Tuli Puliato, the USC guy. We've been able to grab him in the early 50s. But if the Rams drafted an edge and didn't trade back, and they drafted an edge at 36, I think we'd all be good with that. If they drafted a DT, a defensive tackle at 36, I think we'd all be good with that. If they drafted a corner, I think we'd all be good with that. And I don't know if you would be, but I would if they drafted a tight end. Now, again, you don't have to draft a tight end at 36 in this draft. There's a lot of talent, and the Rams currently have Bryce Hopkins, Hunter Long, these guys, and Tyler Higbee under contract. But I'd love to see a talented tight end come in. And so that's something to keep an eye on. And of course, if you can get a top flight tackle at 36, then yeah, okay. But is there going to be a top flight tackle? Osiris Torrance, I think it's Florida. He's been projected in a lot of mock drafts. He's a guard. And again, I don't want a guard at 36. I get a guard later. The guards are the brawlers, right? The tackles and left tackles are kind of more like the ballet performers. And so you would buy that ticket at number 36, which is interesting because it translates to, as I was scrolling around, ESPN had 11 of the most likely players that the Rams could go after at number 36. I thought this was a pretty good piece by ESPN. And some of the other networks picked it up. So it was a pretty good read. There's 11 players listed here, and I kind of liked almost all of them. And at the top of their list was Oklahoma left tackle Anton Harrison. Now, again, where's he rated? there's about 3 guys in front of him. The kid from Penn State, Paris Johnson. There's some guys in front of him, but Anton Harrison, the Oklahoma left tackle, is listed as the 4th best offensive lineman or the 4th best tackle in this draft, and he's listed as the 24th player on the PFF big board. So he's viewed as a talented player, right? And if he was available at 36, I'd say, yeah, that's not bad. My only drawback, he's from Oklahoma, and there's some bad Bobby Evans kind of mojo emanating from Oklahoma. So I'd hate to see the Rams spend that picking and just get the reincarnation of Bobby Evans. So, but on the whole, that's not a bad choice for the Rams if he's there. Again, everything is if he's there. Michigan defensive tackle Mazi Smith. I love that pick. He's listed as the 4th best DT overall and 33rd overall in the big board for PFF, which is a really good chart. If Mazi Smith is actually available at 36, yeah, I'll take a Big Ten guy to plug up the middle there to line up alongside Aaron Donald. The Rams have, they have Copeland and Williams back in the fold. They have Bobby Brown, the 3rd, hopefully developing. And then you add Mazi Smith to that. I would feel great about that if the Rams could draft him right there at 36. Another one that was listed was Iowa State outside linebacker Will McDonald, the 4th. Of course, everyone's been in on Will McDonald. He's actually, it's interesting, he's been leapfrogged a little bit in recent discussion because everything's trending, right? And so you have to take everything with a grain of salt. Felix Anudike Uzma, the Kansas State guy, has jumped up the boards these last few weeks. Nolan Smith, of course, because his combine jumped up the boards. And Will McDonald has stayed kind of stationary, late 1st, early 2nd. And if Will McDonald, big motor at Iowa State's there at 36, I'll dance to that. I love that one. Another interior lineman the Rams have interviewed, the kid Adebawar from Northwestern. I'm good with that one. That's a nice pickup there if the Rams have him at 36. And then I thought it was interesting that Cam Smith, they listed Cam Smith, the South Carolina corner, 6th best rated corner in the draft, 39th rated player overall by PFF. If he's available at 36, 6'1", 4'3" speed, yeah, I'm all in on Cam Smith. And I mentioned Uzuma, he's on this list. The other corners on this list are Emmanuel Forbes. 6'1", 4'3" speed. He's listed as the 5th best corner, 31st overall out of Mississippi State, Emmanuel Forbes. Yeah, if he's available at 36, I'm going to feel good about that pick. Another corner that was listed was Keely Ringo. Now, Ringo is good. He's 6'2", a little bit bigger, not as fast as the other 2 guys I mentioned. He's listed as the 12th best corner in the draft, 73 on PFF's big board. The thing about Ringo is, if you don't get him at 36, he's not going to be there at 69. He's one of those tweeners like Hendon Hooker and some of these other guys, is that they're not going to go high in the 2nd round, but they're not going to fall to the late 3rd or to the middle of the 3rd. They're going to be gone in that 40 to 65 category where the Rams, the Rams have a blank spot there. And so if you really wanted Keely Ringo, and I think it's the Rams brothers, I think they really want Keely Ringo out of Georgia. If they want him, they're going to have to take him at 36. But 36 might be kind of high for the 12th rated corner in the draft. Just call me crazy. Who else is listed here? Oh, another DT, Brian Brzee out of Clemson. He's listed as the 3rd best DT, 21st on the PFF big board. If he was available at 36 and the Rams took him, I'm down with the get down on that. And then 2 other players. It's amazing. They didn't have a wide receiver listed here, but they did have Georgia tight end Darnell Washington, who you can't check for productivity because he played at Georgia and he played behind Bowers at Georgia. But everyone loves Darnell Washington. And yeah, there's other tight ends you could get later in the draft, but Darnell Washington would be a big swing because if he pans out, he's transcendent because of his size and athleticism. If they can make it work, they could be drafting an all-pro type of performer at a second-round price. And so I wouldn't be against it because, you could pick up some other pieces later. But if they didn't draft a tight end, I would be okay too because there's talent down the line here at the tight end spot. And then the one that I somewhat disagreed with is I made my play for Bijan Robinson at Texas being available at 36, and he's not going to be. ESPN listed Jamar Gibbs, Alabama running back. He's listed as the second highest rated running back in the draft behind Robinson, 50th overall. And I'm not good with the Rams taking him at 36. I think between Cam Akers, Kyrene Williams, not necessarily Ronnie Rivers, the Rams could get another running back later in the draft to kind of fill out that backfield. Run Akers like a dog this year, run him into the ground, don't offer him another contract, and then you could reload with another running back next year. I don't know if I'd want to spend pick number 36, even a guy like Jamar Gibbs. I don't know if I'd want to spend a pick on him when I could get a running back later in the draft, maybe third round. And, maybe that's that Kendra Miller out of TCU. Anyway, wanted to throw that out there. And there's more running backs available next year. Real quick, before we get to commercial, Jalen Hurts got his bag today, right? 5-year, 255 rock extension. That's $51 million a year. 179 of it guaranteed. Good for him. Philly likes him, and they know more than I do. All I have in my head about Jalen Hurts was the last pass he threw in the Super Bowl. Did you see the last pass he threw in the Super Bowl? I don't know if he was trying to go deep. I don't know what it was, but it came up awfully short. Like, I'm wondering if he was banged up or something. And so I do have this weird feeling, and I easily could be wrong, right? Back in 84, we were still a teenager, kind of. I was 19, and my friend said, dude, did you check out that Borderline song with that Madonna chick? And I said, Madonna? I said, flash in the pan, dude. She got a flash in the pan. She's got one song. She's gone. So I'm not exactly always the best at evaluating a lot of talent sometimes. And I could be wrong, but something about Jalen Hurts, I think he's really good. But, man, I think he's susceptible to injury, and I know it hasn't happened yet, but good for him. And the great question today is, and this came up in my circle, and it came up on Calvin Coward's show, Jalen Hurts and Lamar Jackson. All things being equal right now, Jalen Hurts. That's who I'd take. And if Jalen Hurts took 5 years, 255, 179 guaranteed, and according to, I think it's Spot Track or Over the Cap, that is $10 million less guaranteed than Kyler Murray took. Really, what kind of position does this put Lamar Jackson in? Really? You got to think about it. And so interesting to see how this plays out. Okay. I'm Joe Tarosian. And if you're out there, leave a comment and be sure to hit like and subscribe. These weeks and these days go up and they go down. They go up and they go down in terms of traction and interaction and stuff. And I just try to ignore them because I just want to keep doing this and not think about, wow, a lot of people watched me today, or wow, a lot of people didn't watch me today. But we're just going to keep doing content 3 days a week here going forward as into this off season. We are 10 days away, almost 2 weeks, less than 2 weeks away from the draft. So it's exciting. I was a sports writer for 21 years, got paid to write sports, mainly football. We did a lot of high school football and some NFL, not NFL. My guys are doing NFL at Mid-Valley Sports. I was one of the founding members there. They're covering the Chargers. I covered everything up to that point because I left and then got the NFL. But I get to do this now, so I'm pretty happy. I read a couple of high school football novels. We covered, Division I football, bowl games, all the minors, XFL, AFL, all that kind of stuff. So we got a lot of football experience, and that was me. And I do the books. I write. You can check out my books on Amazon.com, as well as this. To supplement my income, my day job is I'm a pastor at a small church in Burbank, Burbank Faith Nazarene. You can find us right here online. You can find us on Facebook and on our YouTube channel, Burbank Faith Virtual, if you want to check us out like several people have. And yeah, so I supplement my income this way. Some guys drive Uber. I'm blessed that I get to do this. Okay, I think we got the commercial in. And here we go. All right, Rams history. Born on this date in 1935 was the late, great Lamar Lundy. He would be 88 today if he was still alive. He passed away in 2007. He is the most unheralded member of the fearsome foursome. But if you're watching old Ram highlights, he's the dude in the white and blue wearing number 85. He was a fourth-round pick, 47th overall in 1957 out of Purdue. Played a little bit of tight end for the Rams early on. By his third year, they converted him to defensive end. He actually went to a Pro Bowl that year. In his first 11 seasons with the Rams, he only missed one game. One game. By 68 and 69, his body was falling apart. He only appeared in 9 games. As I think it was NFL Films revisited, because the sack wasn't official until 1982. They revisited his career and give him 60 and a half sacks. Now, 60 and a half sacks, you'd think, man, that might not be a whole lot, but you got to remember, he was one defensive end, Deacon Jones was the other. Oh, yeah, and the guys up the middle, Rosie Greer and Merlin Olsen. So opportunities might not have been there, but Lamar Lundy was a really, really good player. And unfortunately, because of time and brighter names, literally 2 Hall of Famers and Rosie Greer, you are going to get lost in the limelight there. But today, to his family, we remember the great Lamar Lundy. Also turning 51 today was former Rams free safety Keith Lyle. Lyle had 7 years with the Rams. Yes, 1 year in Los Angeles. The rest were in St. Louis. He picked off 28 passes with the Rams, 31 in his career. He won Super Bowl 34 with the Rams. He was a third-round pick, 71st overall in 1994 out of Virginia. His dad was Gary Lyle. I had his football card. He played for the Bears. But I liked Keith Lyle. He was one of those guys, like along with Todd Light and others through the 90s. They were these few people that you could count on. And good for Keith Lyle that he stuck around long enough to have Mike Jones make that tackle in Super Bowl 34 and get his ring before he moved on. Okay, on this date in Ram history, in 1997, the Rams moved up from number 6 to number 1 in a trade with the Jets, and the Jets moved around and did all sorts of other stuff too. But the Rams moved from number 6 to number 1 in that draft. They sent the 6th overall pick, a 3rd round 67, a 4th round 102, and a 5th round 207 to move up to number 1 and draft Orlando Pace. That was a good deal, right? Pace is a Hall of Famer. His career ended kind of quietly, a lot of injuries and stuff, and only went about 10 seasons, 11 seasons. But hey, those seasons were special. And so, yeah, that was a pretty nice deal when the Rams made the move for Orlando Pace on this day in 1997. And you got to figure, they don't make this move in 97. Maybe they don't get to the Super Bowl in 99. And on this day in 1999, while the New Orleans Saints were doing all these things, trading away their entire draft class to draft Texas running back Ricky Williams, the Rams quietly dumped Tony Banks, quarterback, on the Ravens. Banks had been drafted by the Rams out of Michigan State. He had a couple years there to prove himself. And it really wasn't the case of just the Rams being bad, but he had opportunities. He won a ring with the Ravens in 2000, but in that year, 2000, he lost his job to Trent Dilfer. So Tony Banks, a really nice backup quarterback. The Rams got a 5th in 1999 and a 7th rounder in 2000, botched those picks, and you weren't going to get much in that regard. But that was the season going into 99 that the Rams signed Trent Green, right, and moved Banks, and they had some guy named Warner, some dude named Warner that did something after that. And I also like to mention some of these dates as well, is on 2012, on this date, the Rams re-signed Kellen Clemens to a 1-year contract. Oh, that's brutal. Clemens spent 12 years in the NFL. He was drafted 49th overall, 2nd round in 2006 by the Jets out of Oregon. And in 12 years, he made 11 rocks. He made $11 million as a backup quarterback. The struggle is that I think it was in 2013, he started 10 games for the Rams, right? He started 12 overall for the club. His touchdown ratio was 10 touchdowns to 9 interceptions with the Rams, but there was just something about turning on a Ram game, right? Sam Bradford's injured again. They decided not to go with Austin Davis, all these things. Remember Thaddeus Stevens? The Rams just kind of moved on. And there was something about when a game would start that you just kind of lost hope. It's like, who's quarterback? Oh, Kellen Clemens. Okay. The defense is going to hold somebody to 16 points, but we're going to score about 3 points. And by that time, 2013, Steven Jackson was wearing down. Those were dark years. I wanted to go over this a little bit before I leave it behind. On this date in 1978, the San Francisco 49ers, now under Bill Walsh, traded Delvin Williams, who had been a 1,000-yard back for them and a really nice running back for them. They traded him to Miami because Miami thought he was going to be the piece. And they sent a first-round pick and a fourth-round pick to the 49ers. That first-round pick was 24th overall, and it became Dan Buns. And Dan Buns didn't have a long career, but Dan Buns is the guy that, if you remember Super Bowl 16, which only nerds do, when the 49ers had that goal line stand against the Bengals, he's the one that put the wood to Charles Alexander, the former LSU back that was playing for the Bengals. He caught the ball at the one. It looked like he was going to get in, and then it was Buns that came in and leveled him. And if I was a 49er fan, as Mike Jones, who didn't have a long career with the Rams, there's just certain players you remember and have an eternal gratitude for. Traven Howard getting the interception that sent the Rams recently to the Super Bowl. Nickel Roby-Coleman for that marvelous defensive play he made in New Orleans in the NFC title game. There's just players you remember. And I'm sure 49er fans fondly remember Dan Buns. I don't think he was around to collect the second ring in 84, but he did get that one in 81. Also in that Dell Williams trade was this guy named Freddie Solomon. The late, great Freddie Solomon had a great run with the 49ers and played opposite of Dwight Clark. And he got 2 rings with the 49ers. Good for him, out of Tampa. That's where he went to school. They segued from Freddie Solomon to some guy named Jerry Rice. Let's all cry. On this date in 1980, the Vikings traded away the washed Chuck Foreman. Chuck Foreman, his first 3 years in the NFL, was one of the most dynamic backs ever. Hated him because I was a Ram fan. Maybe that's why I dropped this in here. But Chuck Foreman was a great player. Number 44 at the Vikings. Watch the NFL film highlights. This guy's signature move was getting to the second level and then making a pirouette, right? He'd spin away from a defender. Great hands, everything. Played at Iowa. But took a beating like every other running back. And by the time he was 29, he was washed. And the Vikings smartly traded him to New England for a 1981 third-round pick. And that third-round pick was this guy named Tim Irwin that no one remembers. But Tim Irwin started at right tackle for the Vikings for 13 years. So think about this. Not only did the Vikings get Chuck Foreman, at all pro level from 73 through 75, they got him pretty consistently 76, 77. By 78, 79, he was wearing down. And then they parlayed him into a right tackle that played with the team through the 1993 season. That's just, those are the things that you just marvel at, that you see a team make a trade and they get that kind of mileage out of it. So good for the Vikings on that one. And on this day in 1989, I mentioned this, the Miami Dolphins released some familiar names. Woody Bennett, Joe Cribbs. Remember Joe Cribbs? Had a really great flash in the pan with the Bills in the early 80s, and then went to the USFL to get paid, played for the Birmingham Stallions. But guess what? He was a light running back who got hit, and Joe Cribbs was done. By 1989, he was trying to hang on, and the Dolphins just cut him loose. The Dolphins also cut Dwight Stevenson, who missed all the 88 season. Dwight Stevenson, starting center for so many years, he ended up being a Hall of Famer. Now think about that. The Miami Dolphins went from Jim Langer and then had Dwight Stevenson. So through the 70s and the better part of the 80s, they had 2 Hall of Fame centers, right? That's pretty amazing. I think if the Rams had won a Super Bowl, you'd probably be talking Rich Saul, Doug Smith, and who knows, maybe in 69, maybe Ken Iman, because the Rams had a great run of centers as well. But the real name that stood out to me that was released on this day, he was released, he didn't walk out, was Bob Brzezinski. Brzezinski was drafted by the Rams 23rd overall in 1977. He played 13 seasons in the NFL and about 3.5 with the Rams. He walked out on the Rams late in the 1980 season because he felt he was underpaid, and he just walked out. He just quit. The Rams ended up dealing him in the offseason, that spring of 81, and he went to the Dolphins, had 9 years there. He is on a list that's called he's on the Dolphins, one of the Dolphins all-time list. He was a 9-year starter there, but he never made a Pro Bowl. I mean, Bob Brzezinski, we all knew Bob Brzezinski's a pretty good linebacker out of Ohio State, but he never made a Pro Bowl. I think he was rated as one of the best players to ever play that never made a Pro Bowl. But Brzezinski didn't walk out on this day in 89. He was cut and his career was over, but I wanted to work that in there. Okay, we keep moving along. Oh, I got a second like. All right, I feel good. Reminder about that Rams roster right now. 23 players on defense, 23 players on offense. On defense, they've only got 13 players who've taken significant snaps. I broke this down before. If you count 10 starters outside of Aaron Donald will be your 11th starter, okay? Of the combined guys that would play, the 10 that would play and start if the season started right now, combined, those 10 players on defense have 14 years of experience. 14 years of experience. So, yeah, the Rams are going to need some help. And I think they need to trade back. I think they need to load up in this draft and really draft a lot of depth. On offense, they have 23 players signed. 23, 22 is a question there about one of them. Only 18 of them have significant snaps. And there's the rub, right? Is that you look at the Rams defense, they're a 4-win team. But you look at the offense. If the offensive line stays healthy, honestly, the offensive line going down like it did last year, it's not going to happen again the way it did last year. And when someone said the Rams didn't have depth last year, the Rams had depth, but the depth got hurt, right? That's how come you're going to Walmart and signing Matt Skura to play, because even the depth on the roster got hurt. So if everyone stays healthy with the receivers and Matthew Stafford and Kupp and everything, the Rams offense is good. So that's what gives you hope. So that's why I see the Rams as a 7-win team baseline, realistic 7-win team. But I could see with a little bit of defensive help, hitting on a few draft picks, I could see them sneaking out 10 wins if they stay healthy and being in the wild card hunt. As far as specialists, there are 0 specialists on this roster. No kick returner, punt returner, long snapper, kicker, or punter. There's no one on the roster. Currently on the roster, there is 1 quarterback, Matthew Stafford. We don't believe John Wolford is coming back, and all God's people said amen. But the one guy I am for drafting a quarterback. My friend Tim down in Irvine suggested Clayton Tune. I said, I don't know about Tune. I don't like Houston quarterbacks. Then I saw his highlight tape, and I could understand why people like Clayton Tune. And the Rams brought Tune in for a workout. So, okay, I get it. The Rams have also interviewed Aiden O'Connell, and I believe the BYU guy, Jaron Hall. So we understand that. I think they're going to draft a quarterback. If they could find a way to draft Hendon Hooker, I'd be thrilled. I don't know if I want Hendon Hooker at 36. Anyway, I digress. But here's the one. We got our fill of Wolford last year, and we saw Mayfield come in, and Mayfield did a solid job. But the one that brings question to me was the Rams kept Bryce Perkins on the active roster for 2 years. For 2 years. That means they didn't cut him and try to get him to the practice squad because they were fearful someone was going to take him. They believed in Bryce Perkins. and he did some mop-up, but Bryce Perkins only started one game last year. And guess where you asked Bryce Perkins to start? You asked Bryce Perkins to start in Arrowhead, right? That's the only game he got to start on the road, Arrowhead, third string quarterback that you're trying to develop. And I don't think he played any worse than John Wolford. I don't think he looked like Kellen Clemens, right? And they just kind of were done with him after that. And so when someone says, let the GMs figure it out, let the professionals figure it out, well, are you an idiot? Because I don't think I'm an idiot. I'm not an expert completely, but we're not idiots. You know what you see, and it's like, okay, you want to be out of the Bryce Perkins business. Okay, I get that. But why did you keep him on the roster for 2 years and only give him one shot? And that one shot comes when the team is depleted and it's at an Arrowhead against the eventual Super Bowl champions? Call me crazy. I don't get it. I don't want to see Bryce Perkins back as a protected player, that they could bring him back in, but make sure he passes through waivers and put him on the practice squad. I don't want a roster spot for Bryce Perkins, an active roster spot. I do want to see the Rams make a move. My eye was on Mike White originally, but he got kind of a nice deal to back up Tua, and he's going to play because Tua's going to go down. We know that in Miami. And then that's when I pivoted to Davis Mills. But the Rams will draft a quarterback, and if he's available, I'd take Hendon Hooker, and I'd start the process of getting somebody in cheap and developing them, getting them to the next level, because I think we've got this year and I think we've got next year with Matthew Stafford if he stays upright, and then you can start thinking. But he's the only quarterback on the roster right now. There are 3 running backs on the roster. I've mentioned Cam Akers, Kyren Williams, and Ronnie Rivers. Ronnie Rivers, special team player. You'll throw him in there like he used to throw in Hot Rod Phillips in the 70s. He's a guy. I like Kyren Williams as a spot guy. Cam Akers, if his mind is right, is great. And he's in his last year of his contract. I'd run him like a dog. I'd run him like a dog and then let him leave. Just run him like a dog and let him leave. Currently, the Rams have 1 off-ball linebacker with any defensive experience. That's Ernest Jones. They have 7 wide receivers and 3 tight ends. It's just fun to look at some of that and say, could they be drafting some of these guys, right? Because they have to develop depth. We've talked about all the players. There's no one new on the list that the Rams have interviewed. And I'm going down the list here. We know the Rams that have left. We also know A'Shawn Robinson is still out there. Leonard Floyd is still out there. Now, if I'm wrong and they've popped up on some obscure board, please let me know. But if the Rams want to bring back A'Shawn Robinson or Leonard Floyd after June 1st, if their pride will allow them to come back for a dirt cheap deal, then by all means, bring them back. Bring them back. Traven Howard visited the Cowboys. If he's healthy, bring him back after June. Let's bring him in, right? And I feel the same way about Ode Abuche and Ty Neske. If they feel like they need some depth pieces. Thank you, Matt Skura, for playing. We have some lovely parting gifts for you. I don't think there's any room to bring Jacob Harris back. All right. I think that's about it. All right. We got it in, and it was a Stone Groove. It was a Stone Groove show. Everybody, thank you for clicking on, and please leave comments, hit share, drop. Thank you for the likes. I got likes. I try to go on. I'd like to go on earlier. I think this is a good time to go on, but as I share this across social media, it just helps us with our footprint. Thank you so much for your support. Please be sure to check out our sponsors, Temple City Auto Repair, if you live locally, John and Henry Huckmian. And of course, Kistler Law Firm, if you've got an auto accident or an auto question, they're the best in the biz. Okay, guys, God bless. Take care as we get closer and closer to draft day.